Good evening. Jim has a handout he's going to pass around to talk about the alternates. We have reduced those from the original amount, and some of them were we decided to just eliminate from the project. You're going to share the original list with me so I can identify those things. But this is the current suggestions for alternate bids, and some of these alternates, and I think the reason we wanted to come before the board to talk about these is because we're getting into the stage of the project where we're looking to do the stormwater design for the new impervious cover. And we wanted to take a look at these alternates, especially the idea of adding some additional fields, and especially if they are artificial turf fields. We need to plan the stormwater management on the site for any future development that would occur on the site. So even if these are something that you don't do with the project, but you want to do in the future, we can plan the current stormwater design on the site to accommodate these at some future time while we're in the process of doing the construction project. So these are the alternate bids that we want to talk about tonight. Artificial turf fields, the Monroe Street extension, repairs to the Memorial Football Stadium, and we included some pictures of that in your packet. The new basement addition, which we talked about before, which was one of the previous alternates. And then we wanted to just talk a little bit about the geothermal test borings that were done on site for the geothermal heating and cooling system. That report has just come into our office. Okay. So the first thing is additional fields on the site. And David, maybe we could skip ahead a couple so I can show the campus plan of the site, and then we can come back. This is the campus plan of the site, and you can see what we have is we have in the green areas where we have shown the possibility of 2 additional fields behind the baseball stadium. And then you can see the football stadium and the idea in the future, or at this time, if you wanted to put artificial turf into that in the stadium. And you can see along the, going to the left there, you can see the extension of Monroe Street coming along the proposed fields. If you go to the next slide. And this is an alternative connection for the Monroe Street extension that takes the Monroe Street, or takes the road connection over to the district office, and you can see the yellow buildings there are the district buildings, and then it comes onto the district site. So we could create a connection through the site to the district office. So those are 2 proposed extensions of Monroe Street.
They're going to be one way out onto Montgomery.
Currently, right now, it is designed as a 2-way street. It can be controlled by district access. It could be made a 1-way street. I mean, there's several possibilities of how we would want to do that. That would be a district road. It would be on your property. So it could be 1-way. It could be 2-way traffic. It could have some kind of barrier that closes to keep through traffic coming through the site in the evenings, and it would. So there's a lot of possibilities of how you would control that street.
Well, I guess I'm confused. It's not hard for me. What happened to the other road? How did we get this list?
This is the same extension that we talked about. This is the original Monroe Street extension right here. And this is there actually is a right-of-way that comes along where that street is located that was planned for that street to come through at some time. But it is on district property, so it isn't a municipal road, it's on district property. In looking through that, in order to sort of limit the traffic flow and to make it more of a district connection between your buildings, we looked at having it come down and turn into the parking lot at this building is where it connects. And then that parking lot could also be used for parking for play fields in the evening. So with the play fields down there and the connector road, that allows for those fields used. There's also another field where that, the existing field that's in white, right where the road turns. So you'd have 3 fields along that area. And the alternates that we're looking at, we're showing 1 turf field in that location or 2 turf fields in that location. Our prices are shown there to add lights to that location in the future and also to add some bleachers. So those turf fields then would take some of the heavy use off of your grass fields and allow your grass fields more time to recover due to the amount of use that you're getting at your athletic fields. You know, there's several alternative different ways you could look at this. You could put 1 turf field there and 1 in your stadium, and 1 of those grass. So in the handout that we showed tonight, we showed those several different options and pricing as how they could be priced out.
More questions on it? The one where you're taking Monroe Street, and it no longer becomes Monroe Street because we go around the baseball field. How much traffic do we have between the high school and the Ed Center? I mean, to take the road and do that with it, just because the Ed Center's over here. I'm just curious. The other one looked pretty straightforward to me.
It is straightforward, and it is where the current right-of-way was designed.
And we were thinking that this is a nice alternative because there's already an entrance onto Montgomery Avenue out here, where with Montgomery Avenue being a state road, we're going to have a larger impact, traffic impact study if we try to put another entry on Montgomery between Burke's and our driveway.
Oh, okay.
Rather than having to permit that and get all those approved.
Correct.
So now we are getting proposals from traffic engineers to do. We have 1 proposal. We're seeking 2 other proposals. After I talked to David, we're getting other proposals. So we're actually going to have a traffic engineer then study the impact of the on-site circulation. We're going to look at what this will do as far as traffic flow for buses and how it will impact the intersections in town. If some of the traffic from the high school can be diverted and not have to go through the streets in town. So there is a traffic study that will be performed. We're also going to look at the safety and the vehicular circulation around the high school. And we're going to study the impact of the connection between the 2 buildings. And we asked the traffic engineer to look at that and to see if that improves the safety of the campus, and also look at the parking flow. As you drive there in the evenings, when we have a lot of meetings with the design team right as school leaves out, and as you're driving down the roads around the school and the alleys, there's a lot of students walking down the middle of the street. You feel it's very unsafe when you're driving along there. So our design is creating sidewalks and grass areas, separating the parking areas. We're also going to have the traffic engineer look at the pedestrian safety on site in the roads. So that traffic study will be in process probably within the next couple weeks, and we'll be able to get back to you.
I got a question.
Some reports on that.
The way you have it designed there now, the alternate route, would that in any way interfere with any additional construction on the Fogelsdale School in the future?
No, it shouldn't interfere with any future construction on that site. If you put in additions on there, it really wouldn't interfere with that. This allows us to use an existing road access, as David was saying, rather than creating new access. I think you also want to avoid people using that as a shortcut, just driving through the campus. This reverses. So we can have the traffic engineer look at both of these, and
Well, you would be creating more traffic through their pace than elementary school, correct?
we would. And it comes out right between the elementary school and the district office. So it would create more traffic through that.
I don't like that.
Did you ever try to pull out up further? From Montgomery Avenue on to, what is that, 560? 562, I don't know the name of the road. South Reading Avenue. You're trying to pull out there? And you wanna put buses that way?
Well, maybe
Just
that,
asking.
I mean, I think there's a lot of concern about additional buses going through town, but I think the thing to do here is to, you know, to have this studied by the traffic consultant. And what, I think what we want to do, as we look at designing the site, if this is something you're even going to look at in the future, to do this, maybe it's not part of the project, but maybe these are something you want to plan in the future, then we should design the on-site stormwater management to handle these future projects. So if you get this project all done, and then 2 years or 3 years from now, you decide you want to put some turf fields in, or you want to put this road extension, then you're going to get back into a stormwater management plan again in order to do any new impervious cover. So as a team here, we need to think about the future of this campus, and we need to plan ahead for it.
Can I ask you one more question? I don't want to divert from what we're doing here, but we're going to be bringing at least another 650 people into that school by the same routes. By the same routes that we're using now. You don't see that as a problem?
Well, that's why I think it may be important, and we think it, since that Monroe Street was planned to go through that, through the campus.
But you still have to get to the school regardless, no matter which way you go. You gotta come into Boyertown with another 650 students and support staff, correct? No matter which way you come.
That's correct, but if Monroe Street is, for some reason, is blocked over in this area,
Yeah.
you know, you only have one main road coming into the school right now. You have some driveways and some other passageways coming into the school, but most of your vehicular circulation comes on Monroe Street. And this allows you to have a secondary access to the school, even if it's closed off in the evenings to create through traffic coming through the school.
Question. If we have the right of way established through there right now, what's the fear of permits for access? I mean, they expect that the road, an intersection is gonna be there because we have the right of way set up already.
Yeah, what we believe is there was never a highway occupancy permit done
Oh,
onto the state highway.
okay, so it was a paper job up to that point and then dropped. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a right-of-way that was put on paper, but never went through the approval process to get the highway occupancy. But you do have a highway occupancy at the elementary school.
Okay. Yes.
Well, you know, looking at the project, and to Joe's point, certainly we're, you know, gonna have more teachers coming in, you know, staff, whatever, certainly more students, more buses. And talking to people that live in Boyertown, that is a concern. So I think this Monroe Street extension is very important, something to look at.
Yeah, I think we need to, think we need to get it,
I think it's something more like now, not in the future, and then
get an alternate bid on it so we can decide.
I am concerned about running a road right, looks like it an option 2, literally right next to Colebrook Elementary, and having more vehicles coming, you know, passing an elementary school. And it does, I know you made a statement earlier, but I mean, looking at it, to me, it could limit us. It takes away doing anything to the south side of that building.
John?
Yes.
When I looked at the plan, I have a couple of questions. I like the idea of going straight through to Montgomery Avenue. I think that brings, if you can use that as a main entrance, that brings us to where all the parking is, and the back of the building becomes a focus, and it relieves congestion that's in the, I think it's 4th 73 anyhow in the town. So I think that that's a good idea. But my concern, I know like tonight when I came over here for the meeting, actually when I left earlier, when I was here at 3:30, there were sports games going on in those fields. Is there going to be enough room away? I mean, here it looks like the fields are right up against the road almost. Is there, I mean, my concern would be traffic coming in and out if we have sporting events, if they're, you know, what are those fields used for, the safety issue with that. Have you talked about that, or?
Well,
We're looking
they're gonna be
blank.
Fenced in,
Pardon?
they're gonna be fenced.
They'll be fenced.
Dales will do.
Okay, I didn't know that. So that's an additional cost that we will have to consider then, because they're not fenced now, correct? Okay.
Would that be part of the option? One of the,
Well, that's a suggestion for going with the artificial turf, because you don't want it, you know, people driving on it, so.
we don't want them driving on regular turf either.
Yeah, but there's nothing stopping her.
Right now, our numbers don't have a fence around it. Yeah, we can have, our numbers that we're showing this book don't have fencing around the grass fields, but they could be the existing grass fields.
I think if we're gonna do that, that should be part of the, alternate.
Yeah, I think you're, okay, we can add that in.
Are there any other things that we should look at in terms of safety? Because, you know, that field is going down, or that road is going, you know, past the projected fields on either side.
Is anybody parking there before?
And that would be that would be the school district's road along there. It's not gonna be a public road, it's your road. So that road can have controls on it, that you can have gates or some type of barrier that closes at certain times. To keep people using that as a shortcut through the campus. So it would be a road that you can control.
We also have the option to have that dedicated to the township, so they would maintain it.
If you wanted to do that, then you probably would not be able to control it though, if you
Yeah.
turned it over to the
Alright.
township.
Would that have, on either side of that road, would that be a two-lane? And would it have parking on either side of it?
Right now, we're not showing parking on either side. We are
Because
showing.
those fields have activities there, where are they gonna park?
Probably where they park now,
In that-
we'll try.
Yeah, they do, it's school tonight.
Right, and we also have some parking along this area by the high school, but we don't have any parking showing
Well,
right by the
walking's good
field.
for them anyway.
Can I go on another?
There's a small spot where you could add some parking in there. We
Yeah,
could,
that little
in
corner.
that corner, we could add some additional parking.
Is it
It's part of
possible
the
to do a
parking.
road in the parking lot to Burke? Between the two baseball diamonds?
I'm sorry, between the.
Burke's is road over by the tennis
Tennis
courts.
courts.
No, no, no.
Limit to the right field, wouldn't it?
Well, isn't this the parking of the? Yes.
Maybe, that's the varsity field.
I don't know, it just looked like that's a rough right there.
There's two fields there.
Yes, there are two
Yeah.
fields.
And they're both the girls softball fields, the JV and the varsity.
Good road to come out on there. Yeah, it's not, that's, we find that a good way to put a lot of traffic out into that road.
Bert?
Okay, well, I was just looking at shortest distance.
Yeah.
So,
Different access.
okay, so we like the idea of coming straight, and so we'll have that study, and then we'll have the intersection looked at as far as the traffic report, and then that would have to be permanent, have to get permit in order to enter onto the state highway at that point, even though it was needed. So that was the one thing we wanted to talk about, so that's the one that the board preferred, is straighter access. And then what we looked at in order to get some additional play fields, and because the campus is restricted, there was quite a bit of talk in our design meetings, and I think quite previously at the board, about some turf fields. So we showed 2 turf fields in that location, and then in your packet, we showed some pricing for the turf fields. And then we also included this, this is a manufacturer's brochure that's in your packet from Field Turf Company. It's called Turf Talk, and it shows uses and some information on some turf fields. So if you go back to page 1, this is page 2 of the handout, is where we have the turf field cost options. Maybe you can let this projector
Are we would we be planning to take fields and make them turf fields? Are we planning to build new fields?
There's some fields in that area.
So we're just changing it to official.
Yes, yes.
What plan is, this proposal is, as an alternate, to make 2 of the regular grass fields into turf fields.
Oh,
They already exist.
we have no more fields.
There's 2, so we're adding 2.
We're not
It's
adding.
not any,
There's 2
all right,
in there.
that's not going
That's why I
to.
asked.
There's 4 there now, and we're gonna end up with 4. I just wanted to verify.
So the option would be to put turf on those fields that, and we would not gain any additional fields.
So we gain probably more usage
Oh, yeah.
with lights and bleachers.
Yes.
So you said that even if we didn't do it now, we knew we might want to do that in the future, you could do some planning so it would be easier in the future.
Right, we could do it as an alternate bid to the project, which is what we're looking at now. And then that alternate bid would design the stormwater on site for future installation of the field. So if you decided not to do it as part of the project, the stormwater design could still be taken care of so that the fields could be added at a later point. We could put that alternate bid in the project that way. We could put the alternate bid in to do the 2 fields. You can see the price here for the 2 fields. You could do 1, you could do 2. It would be the option of the board. There's some,
What's the price of the stormwater addition? Is it in here?
well, the stormwater design is in this estimate. To just do the stormwater, we would have to break that out if we
In
just.
which estimate?
The option, in there, option 1 and option 2 for the
For the
turf
artificial
fields.
turf.
Part of that cost includes the stormwater design for the field.
Let's see this option 1, it has a 6-foot high fence surrounding the field.
Yes.
That's in the option already.
Yes, the turf fields would be fenced in. And because you want to fence in any turf fields that you do so people aren't going on those with any type of bike or vehicle or other things. So typically a turf field would have fence around it. We included the price for the fencing. But we did as we. The 6-foot fencing surrounding the field.
If you don't mind, I'll just step in here for 1 second. Option 2, you're saying it has 2 fields. It's the stadium field plus 1 other field. So the slide that we showed you, the slide that we showed you has 3 fields colored. That's, you can pick and choose any combination thereof. So what the pricing's trying to do, in option 1, is 2 adjacent fields. So the 2 side-by-side fields would have a 6-foot high fence around it. Then you could add to that, the alternates below that. We could put in additional lighting for 1 field or 2 fields, or we could do bleachers for 500 if that's enough. So we're trying to do that as like a shopping list. but that's for 2 adjacent fields. That's probably the most economical approach from a staging and constructability standpoint. Option 2 takes Memorial Stadium and turns that into a turf field, plus 1 other field. So that's why you see the cost difference for the option 1, option 2 base field, because the Memorial Stadium field takes up a bigger footprint area, and there's gonna be different staging that's gonna have to take place, and try to get into the stadium, it's gonna be a harder task for the contractors. So there's a cost difference in constructability. Now with the options then, you basically turn into the second field if you have 1 field down in the adjacent 2 fields at 825,000. Those 2 right there. So you would have the one of those 2 fields is going to be like 825, and you've got a little over $1 million in the stadium field. But if you do the 2 side-by-side fields, there's a cost reduction because you're staging right there. So that's why the numbers are it's a mix and match, but it's kind of trying to give you a shopping list of how you want to approach that.
We know you ask a lot of questions, and you ask for a lot of options, so we tried to combine them together here, and they will make it so that you can say, okay, well, if we want to do this one and this one down here, what would the price be? So we tried to put it all together, so that it's all here at one time so we can talk about it. I think
Donna's question.
Yeah, so the stormwater planning, I would like to see how much it would be just to do the stormwater planning, but what would be the advantage of doing that now rather than at some point in the future if we were deciding to do turf then?
Yeah, if you're not gonna do anything down in these fields, and you're not gonna do the road through there, and there's not gonna be any construction, then you could let that whole area go for a future time.
Suppose we were just putting the road through.
Okay, and you can see how close the road is to that field. It almost makes sense then to do the work in that area, so you're only tearing it up one time. But you don't have to do that.
Okay.
But we're just bringing it to your attention, so somewhere in the future you say, wow, we should have done that at the same time we had all this torn up to put a road. So we're just bringing it to your attention. These things can be bid as alternate bids to the project, based on the bidding climate. I mean, if you bring a CM on board, they can look at some cost estimates on these, they can give you some opinions on what to do about this. But as we're moving, we're gonna be starting to move into construction documents on the project. We're finishing up the design development phase. We're moving into construction documents, which are the detailed drawings for the project. We're trying to stay on schedule. And this is something that I think the board, bring it to your attention tonight, so you need to think about this to give us some direction as to where you want to go.
Question. Just because we got bids, doesn't mean we have to do it. Depends on where the bid comes in,
That's correct.
okay?
That's correct.
So I have no problem getting the bids if the contractors are willing to do it. Because we can look at it after that and decide, what we're gonna do. Yes, but
I wanted to be clear on the stormwater. If you were giving us an estimate of just having that stormwater management work done prior to doing your field.
Right, we have that included in the
Is that
number.
is that the only place you'd be looking at that would be along the driveway?
Right, I mean, we'd have to take an area where we have some stormwater management, or we have to put the stormwater management underground. But when we're excavating in that area for the road, we can put some stormwater
So you're
management
just
in that.
basically looking at the stormwater management in relation to where that road's going through, where the fields are.
Well, the artificial turf has an impact on stormwater.
So you would be looking at it going around the fields also.
If you go around the field, we normally, when we're doing fields, we put underground stormwater management. Okay, so that, or you can put a basin, but because your site is so restrictive right now, what we would recommend, and what we typically do with turf fields, is we put it underground. So that it isn't, you can do a swale, you've seen swales where you have stormwater management, but if you look at your site, it's so limited in available space that you don't have a field, you don't have a lot of area where you can just do above ground stormwater. But we could give you a separate breakout and say what would it be just to put the stormwater in for future fields. but
Yes.
that's one thing we don't have on there.
It's quite a bit of money, but I definitely would like to be looking at these fields. I guess my question may be for you, Brett. Did I hear you say those fields are usable now or sometimes not because of water situations, or are they usable, those two fields that he's talking about there?
The ones that are colored green? I mean, they're used now, and usable.
Okay, so they are used right now.
But they're used really hard.
Okay.
They're ones that
We can't
we
keep the
can't
grass
keep the
growing.
grass growing. That's the difficult
Yeah.
part.
Halfway through the season, they're planning on mud.
All right, because I will, with the ninth grade coming in, what impact will that have on, I mean, will we even have enough fields? I mean, because we're not adding fields. I thought at one point we were adding fields, or adding a field or something in order to help with the ninth grade coming in. Will you have, in other words, will you have enough fields? Let's say we don't put turf in there. and
So we don't do anything?
Do you have enough fields with what exists right now there?
We're bringing ninth grade programs to the high school. I mean, it's hard for me to answer. I don't see it. I don't see having enough. Because you're bringing that many more students to the high school, and you're bringing the program with it.
Are we looking at put the fields on Mosers Mound and that way?
Well, that's the thing, where this ends right here, we do own a plot of land up here.
Right, and then there's Mosers Mound there.
Right, we did look at some, at one time we did look at some fields.
Right.
Yeah, and
Early on.
actually, when we started looking at this, we said, you know, those might be the artificial, but it doesn't make sense to put artificial
So far
that
away.
far away from high school. That's why we said, maybe we level that, put grass fields up there, and look at artificial down at the two main fields that are used the hardest.
Why doesn't this map show the area that we
I
have?
missed some meetings.
No, we didn't decide on turf, we're just showing you some options right now for it. There was no decision made, we're looking at it, because when you start developing additional grass fields, you're gonna spend, additional money also.
We
And
didn't see, I don't see any additional grass fields proposed.
in the earlier schemes, we had
Now,
some.
now I'm talking about.
We can go back and look at adding some additional grass fields and the cost of that. I think as we were meeting on the project, keeping them close to the school.
I think that's I guess that's my point in looking at this. If we don't have enough fields, why would we think of making two fields turf, spending our money on that, when we should think of maybe a grass field somewhere else in order to make sure that over at the high school you have enough space?
Now, this picture has been in existence for, you know, probably over about a year now. And we do own this land right here.
That's not shown in this drawing though.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
But it
So
is
there's room
another
there-
option that we
Room
can
there
just
for
level
two
that off.
soccer fields or some kind of field.
And that would also be an alternate.
Problem with your grass fields is that you're overusing the fields, you should be resting them for a season. I mean, Paul's having this problem with the rainy season right now, is if you let students on those fields, they'll rip them up in the spring. But you don't have that problem with turf fields. And so districts that put those in, and if you talk to other board members, when you see them that have turf fields, they'll tell you how much they get used. And they get used by the school, they get used by the community, they'll be used all day, most of the night, and all weekend. That's what happens with those. And if you look at the figures on the use of fields and the payback on turf fields, they normally pay back the cost because you don't have to seed fields, you don't have to line them, you don't have to mow them, the things that you have to do to grass fields. But it takes about 5 to 10 years to pay back the investment that you put in those fields. So it takes a while, but you have much safer fields to play on.
I have a
Okay, yes.
question. Just for clarification, I thought that the ninth graders that played JV, and I thought they came to the high school already and used those fields. So if that's true, wouldn't you have enough fields already?
That's not true.
There's additional
Yeah,
teams.
you-
There's a ninth grade team, there's ninth grade teams.
Yeah, the ninth
Freshman
grade
teams.
teams.
Some
Are
play
they
JV,
specific,
but
are they only ninth grade or are they eighth and ninth grade?
It depends on the sport too. I mean, there are some ninth graders who do play on JV that they're invited up to play.
Right.
But there are separate freshman teams that currently practice at the junior high buildings
Okay.
in different sports.
Yes.
Okay.
Mark Joe's
Joe's.
question.
That's mine.
What's the,
Oh, that's yours. That's what we discussed later. Okay.
Oh, get back.
You asked me.
Well, you
the
already
other
answered
alternate.
that.
Okay.
what's the,
So these are the alternates that we,
question is, what's the usage life, what's the lifespan of a turf field? How long do they last?
and that depends on the amount of usage on the field.
Well, they'll be used hard, what would you say?
I think they normally look at the carpet life of it is about 10 years if it's used really.
That's how long it'll take us to
Back we need to do it.
Yeah, and that's about how long it takes to get your payback out of it, and then, you know, with real heavy use, it could be 10 years. I mean, it could be longer depending how often you groom it and how well you maintain it.
That could be yes.
You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're right, it's like a car, if you don't take care of it, you don't get as long a life out of it as if you change the oil. It's just like a brand new.
It's the ballpark, how does that compare to the cost of creating two new graphics?
Well, I'll give you a breakout on that. I don't have that. Two grass fields are in here, Jim, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
So we did include that.
And,
Page three.
we're not getting very far here.
This is on the chart on the page. Okay, and we did a 10-year breakout, and this is from studies that were done at other school districts where we've done some work. It's also from information taken out of studies that were done on turf fields.
Is this for a brand new one now? Brand new field?
Brand new turf field,
No, brand new field.
brand new, this is a sod field, if we were to resod those fields
No.
with sod.
Or you put the two.
A new field, if you take these two fields down here, and you make these two sod fields, brand new,
16.
Right.
okay? And then you compare that to, let's say we made
Where is
these
that
two.
figure?
It's on the chart.
Page three.
Yeah, is it two individual fields, two adjacent fields, either one of those?
So we have a column that says adjacent, and we have a column that says
That's for
individual.
brand new field. We have dirt here and you're gonna make a field.
Correct. And what you can see is there's normally when we bid two together, when you bid two of them together, because they're close together, there tends to be a savings, a cost savings, and that's what we're trying to show here, is there tends to be a cost savings. Sometimes it's even greater than this, and we've done two together at Lower Dalton School District recently. We did two together at Southern York County School District.
Would that create more of a drainage problem down there? Is that a wet area down there, Paul? Where the two, if we put two more fields down there?
He's got to design a stormwater system to support it, so.
Right, if we do two turf fields, we're going to, as part of the design here, as part of the cost, we're doing the stormwater management for those two fields underground.
My question was if you had two grass fields at the end down there, is that gonna create a runoff problem?
There's two conversations to make about
Way back there.
I'm one for me. Well, that's where that water feet, that is the swamp land up there, the lower portion, that's where that creek runs, it's sort of a creek that runs through there.
We have too many conversations going on. Joe has the floor.
Well, I was just asking Paul that question because he's familiar. I think that's wetland down in there, is it not?
I don't know that it's wetland, I'd have to check the survey data. I don't know.
It's pretty swampy down there. But that's, you know, you improve the drainage and, you know, you put
Yeah,
the water
okay,
in.
I just, thank you. I'm done.
All right.
Any other questions?
Um,
Now, going back to turf fields now, we're going to do an alternate bid with minor modifications, as you heard from the roof.
Okay. Okay.
And
For,
I had a question in your option two, if that included the 6-foot fence, because it wasn't listed for that one for. It's on page 2.
I think it has to, because it still says $825.
yeah, but you please.
Well, I know, but above the line there, it doesn't list the 6-foot high fence, so I just wanted to
You're
make
right.
sure it had the 6-foot high fence.
But if on the line, it's just the Memorial Stadium.
One of them, just one field, yeah.
No, it's just two individual fields.
Yeah, but if you look under option 1, it says artificial turf field 825, and I think those 5 bullets are included in that.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right, so it's out of a second artificial turf field is that same 825,000.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I got it.
Okay, and these are, I mean, these are estimates at this time, these aren't bid numbers, these are estimates, and as we start to lay it out, I mean, we're giving you probably what is a high estimate at this point, and as we lay it out and we look at it and we get more detailed information, we'll come back and give you updated information. Right now, we're doing this to give you a comparison of what it would be between a turf field
Okay,
and a grass field.
so I would suggest that we have the alternative.
You want to put the alternate?
And with modifications like the fence and stuff, just
Okay.
clarify.
I'll clarify, okay. And then we want to look at the Monroe extension coming straight through to where the current right-of-way is. Okay.
Do we want to talk about the lighting? I mean, as long as it's dug up, are we going to put the electric service in there for the lights, or?
Well,
For the fields?
Right, because I mean, just last week, I drove by O&J Roberts at 10:30, and their artificial turf lights were on. There were kids using the
Are you
field
paying
on
for
Wednesday night at 10:30.
It should be in bed.
Well, the community up in Southern will use it till 11 o'clock.
The things that you showed, option 1, option 2, does include turf lights as part of the old.
Well, those are all.
Yeah, but if we get it as an order, we can decide at that time.
Okay, so we'll do that, we'll work on that package and come back with more detailed information.
Yes.
I just want, I want to get clarification. You said we'll get bids on what, option 1 or 2, or I'm not tracking what you're saying?
The surf field, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're talking about. We didn't pick option 1 or option 2, I was looking at the general artificial surf fields.
Well, I mean, my thoughts, I don't have the passion for this that I do for the Monroe Street extension, or for the project in itself. I guess it can't hurt to look at it, but, and I see where it would be a benefit. But, I don't know if it's as necessary, but I see definitely where it would be a benefit. But I guess, John, I'm just trying to understand,
I missed the point, we ought to pick option 1 or option 2 to go with.
if we are gonna
Yeah.
say, let's explore it a little more, I'm curious which
Well, like I
option.
said, the options will include the artificial lights and things like that, which we can pick out. Later, we can say, yeah, we'll do this part of it, and we won't do this part of it.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's like Dave, you were talking about or Dr. Lucy was talking about the community using these turf fields after, late, like till 11 o'clock. Do other school districts charge the community to use the fields? Like, is that like you charge them to use classrooms and gyms and stuff? Do they charge to use fields?
Well, there's a charge in our policy for the use of the lights at Memorial Stadium.
That's the lights, that's not the field.
Right.
Oh, you're putting lights here.
So you just
But
charge
but
them?
if you look at the policy, if they're a community group, we would not charge them. So if the Optimist wanted to have
Okay.
football practice at 9 o'clock, we would not charge them.
But
But
we charge if there were lights?
if
we
there are
charge
lights,
them.
we may charge them.
Okay. I was just wondering where we were with that. We have turf fields, maybe we need to look at that.
To clarify, look for options with option 2, which includes all of them, and gives us a choice of saying, hey, this, and this are cost beneficial.
So option 1 is the 2 adjacent fields that are by the Monroe Street extension. There are the 2.
That's this one right here, John.
So we're showing those 2 fields together being turf fields. By making those turf fields, it takes some of the use, practice use and other things off of Memorial Field, which will allow the grass to probably recover and be better in there, and that becomes more of a game field. The other option puts 1 turf field in there, leaves the other one grass, and then makes Memorial Field turf.
Yeah, but as you go on the option, alternatives there, you said add second artificial turf field.
Those are
We
the two
start out with,
adjacent.
we start out with 2 at the top.
No, there's only one at the
It says 2 adjacent
Are you on page, are we on
Yes,
page
it's on
6?
the
I'm on page 2.
Yeah, and then it says Memorial Stadium
It's
plus
two,
1.
two individual fields, and then it says Memorial Stadium plus 1.
This is option 2.
Those are the 2 some extent. Right, the first one is Memorial Stadium, the second one is
So that would, option 2 would include all that.
No, option,
It would only include,
we tried to give you 2 options because we thought you would ask us for that. And I think it's making it more confusing, but
do all 3 of them.
you could do all 3 of them. That isn't an option that we had on the sheet. But what we were trying to show you was the, what we see when we bid them is a discount that we normally see if you put 2 together.
I read it as all 3 were on that option. I understand.
Yeah, right, I just,
Yes.
So I guess I'm trying to understand, what fields get used the most? So if we were going to proceed with this, I mean, does Memorial Stadium Field get used as much as these 2 adjacent
the
fields?
2 adjacent fields, I would say you use the most.
So,
because they don't allow you to use.
so that is,
That's practice every
That was
day.
intentional.
There's not games, well, there might be games every day, but it's not multiple teams.
But the decision there is optional
Is the other
to
fields.
preserve Memorial Stadium.
Right, now, are you a purist? I mean, do you like to see grass stains on the uniforms, and you don't want to do artificial turf in Memorial Stadium?
Use this one,
I
comes
mean,
out.
pretty soon, natural turf is going to be a novelty, because all school districts are going to artificial.
Put that money in your school.
Like I said, it's a bid, it's an option right now, we don't have to step in until we find out if it's cost beneficial.
Okay. And what we did is, well, that's why we, in the pricing, we included seating bleachers for 500 spectators. So if you put lights up and you fence in those fields, you could put, we showed 500 seating. Normally, we design it so that you can add to it. And if you start doing practices and other things down there, you can add some additional seating down there to grow beyond 500. But that's how we set up this all.
Okay.
Keeping it all together in one construction area.
Just give us an alternate on all 3 turf,
Okay.
with the option that we can work on. Yes, sir.
I just have a question. If we're getting these figures and we're not sure what we're doing, and you said like, get the figures on lighting and then we can decide, can we get, this might sound odd, but can we get the price of the lighting, trenches and everything, the wires and everything put in to a point? So we don't have to rip up everything else if we would decide on the fields, number 1, in the first place, and number 2, then if you go to put lighting later, you don't have to rip anything up, your base is right there.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying, John?
Right, and that's the kind of thing that we would do when we get the project ready to go out to bids. I mean, no, seriously, I'm being serious, but those are the kind of alternate bids you would put in a project when you go out to bid. If you don't do the turf fields, leave all the trenching in and put all the wiring in for the future lighting in that area. And that's how you set up the bids. You heard your construction managers talk about putting bid packages together and alternate bids. Those are the type of things you do in a project. So you run all the electrical out there, you stub it up, you put in a boxing, and if you don't do the fields, all that's underground, it's under the road, it's all ready to go for future use. So those are the kind of things that you're gonna wanna do as you put this project out to bid. So if you decided not to go with lights out there, just like you're saying, everything would be in for future lights. I think the,
Yes?
I'd like to see just, how about if we just put artificial turf Memorial Stadium, we could use it more, and we already have lighting there. If we just did that field. We could use it more, it's limited now, we already have lights there.
Well,
Put the other,
If we get
put
the
the road
bids,
in and forget them a little bit.
if we can get the bids, we can pick and choose which ones we're going to accept. You know, and if we decide at some point that we're going to do Memorial Stadium, we can delete the other two options. So it'll give us choices
Yeah.
if we get them.
I think you have to be careful about too many choices because it involves design and it involves design fees and it involves permitting and other things that we have to do. And just to get pricing, you know, I don't want to like take you down there and say, oh, let's do all this pricing. But there are costs, there's survey work, there's other things that have to be done for these fields to be designed. And you don't want to do that if you're really not like serious about doing it. I mean, and I think as board, we don't have to decide tonight, but I think you should think about which is the best solution for the district. And it always comes back to that at every school district. Do you put it in the stadium where you already have lights and seating and you use that? Or do you put it at a separate area where you have practice and other groups can use it, which gives you more flexibility? That's something I think that I've been like working with other districts where that's a dilemma that you have to go through. But I don't think you want to, and maybe you want to, but there is cost associated with doing both.
All right,
Okay?
yes.
Are you saying there's gonna be a cost to putting these out for bid?
There's a cost for any alternate that we do on the project. There are costs to design it. For instance,
That's what I'm saying, for you to put these out, you're gonna have to design it.
that's correct.
So that, well, I'm not voting on anything we put out then.
Okay, I mean, not only do we have to design it, but if we're gonna do turf fields there, we have to have survey work done, or even if it's done in Memorial Stadium, we're gonna have to go out and do survey, we're gonna have to do infiltration pits. There's a whole series of testing, right? Okay, that has to be done in order for us to properly design a drainage system for a turf field. So
Okay.
it's,
You answered my question, we had a lady here last week, and her kids can't even get studies in school, so I'm not voting on their turf field.
okay, I mean, I'm being upfront with you. There's clearly costs associated with doing something. It's not just here's the drawing, put it out to bid. It's a complicated process that we have to go through to properly design the drainage under a turf field.
Yes, Steve.
No, I mean, I do appreciate the different alternative bids, and I guess I would want to chat about the other two. Right now, I just don't see the artificial turf bids as a top priority for the district, for the taxpayers. But I will say it's a perfect time if we were going to proceed for our naming rights policy. Because I think if a company or individual wanted to do a naming rights, what better area to use it, or one of the better areas would be something with the stadium. So maybe in conjunction with that, we can somehow make that work.
Any other comments? So what are we leaving now?
So at this point, do you need as to whether who's going to furnish those options to us or not? Because I think that's where he's at.
So we decided we're going to go with the Monroe Street as a alternate business project.
Right.
So we're going to proceed with that. Okay.
That I thought we had to decide.
Okay. And then we started with the two turf fields down here, and then we started to add in the Memorial Stadium, and then I think I threw everybody off the train or something. But I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Is it still, are we moving it forward?
Right. Is there enough support?
No, we're talking about Monroe Street isn't good to that either. The thing is, which option do we wanna go with? The one going out using the right of way, or the one going?
Option
I
one or
think we
two.
favored option one.
I think we favor option one, but is there enough people here?
Well, that's what I wanna find out. Who is in option one?
Which one's option one?
That's
That
one.
one.
On Monroe Street.
I support option one.
Okay,
I support option one.
One.
okay, that's
Okay, good.
where we're going with that.
We got that in common. The next one is, are we going to look at the turf fields near the Monroe Street extension?
What?
Or do we want to look at the alternate for the turf fields by the Monroe Street extension? That's the two fields to the left of the bottom of the sheet. We can look at one turf field or two turf fields in that location. I think if we're doing the exploratory design for one, it's the same for the other one, and that would allow you to design two and then bid the one as an alternate.
Just to clarify, you said it's gonna cost more money for surveying for the design. Is that your cost or is that another specialist?
Well, we have a survey done of the entire campus. When we got the survey of the campus done, we did the entire survey of the campus. Now when you get into turf fields, we're gonna have to do some more specific spot elevations. And then, in order to design the drainage, we're gonna have to do an infiltration.
So then when if we do accept the bid for the alternates, you don't get your 6% of the alternate, because your cost will be accepted.
No, if you accept the alternate, then then we get a percentage of that, just like we would on anything else.
But we have to pay for you to design it at the front.
Right, but you only pay
Yeah,
us for the design portion of it, and then you pay us the remaining part of it for the construction phase part. So we get some of it up front, a portion of our 6%, we get 80% for design, and 20% for construction and administration.
So it shouldn't be more than 6%.
It wouldn't be more than 6%.
Well, personally, I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I would like to chat about the other two alternates before we go too much further, because I'm just kind of skipping ahead here. And it looks like there's a need for some things at Memorial Stadium. I'm not quite sure what the basement addition is, so I guess I would
All right, let's do that.
kind of like to,
Okay.
it's up, whatever you want to do, you're the chair, but I'm just throwing that out there before we start going too deep into this. I'd like to kind of know what the other two items are.
Okay, we also included in this package a study that we were asked to look at, and this goes back to when we started the study of the high school, back when we were doing the feasibility study. We were asked to look at some brick decay and water penetration that was occurring at Memorial Stadium. There was some scalding of some concrete and other things, and the pictures are in the handout that we're providing to you, showing where some of the water penetration is and some of where the mortar is breaking out in the stadium. And so, because we're doing the work around the high school, we wanted to bring it to the board's attention that this might be something that you want to address as part of the construction project while there are contractors on site. You can see the pictures here. This was done by a structural engineer that we had come in and look at the spacing, or the expansion and the contraction that is occurring in the stage. You can see because of that, there's water coming through some of the concrete work. I think if you want to address that or look at that in more detail, then we need to do some additional studies and some more investigation of that to find out exactly what the problem is. Because this was just an initial review of that. And why we're bringing this to your attention, and we talked about this in one of our team meetings, we just wanted to make sure that the board was aware when we're all finished on this campus and we walk away, that somebody doesn't say, well, why didn't we touch the problems that we have with the brickwork at Memorial Stadium.
What's the latest language, what's CMU mean?
That's the concrete masonry units that are on the project.
Block.
block, concrete block, and brick and concrete, and there's poured concrete in that stadium. And because of the age of the facility and contraction and expansion, the water's coming through, and you can see what's, some of the pictures of what's happening. Exactly.
How difficult is it to have this available for bid?
Well, the next thing we have to do is we have to do a more detailed analysis. And just try to determine exactly what the problem is beyond this. We have identified the issues here.
How did you get these numbers without having it repaired? You say $320,000 to $500,000. What else do you have to do? I mean,
I think we had a range there of what we're guessing the repairs to that are
It's
going to
okay.
be. Okay, we're making an estimate. We have a list here of things that need to be done. You can see, we think the flashing, the through wall flashing and the weeps that are in there are, need to be corrected. And this is clearly something you can do at another time, but we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of it. Are those pictures in our presentation? Is this page in there? Yeah, if you go to the,
They're in here.
yeah, I think it's in the slide presentation too, just so the audience can see that, because you don't. Okay.
Got a question.
Yes.
On your estimate here, the project cost of, say, 500,000, what would your percentage be on that?
Well, our contract for the district is a 6% design fee. Now,
That's
what?
30,000.
6% of the construction cost of them. We don't know if it's 500,000 or it's 300,000 yet. We know that there's some issues here without looking at it in more detail. And the question is do you want us to look at it and get you more specific numbers? Is it something you want to consider repairing as part of the project when contractors are on site? That's really what we're asking.
Okay,
How
that's a
much
good
is that gonna
question.
cost?
Yes.
I don't think we had a number for the study to go.
It's 13.
About 13,000.
And again, I can explain what the study is if I may.
David, can we go to the pictures? I think the people there want to.
What we don't know is what's happening when the water gets behind the face brick.
No, they're not in
It
there.
goes through the freeze-thaw cycle. So in the front of the stadium, you're seeing the push happening in the face brick. Well, we don't know the wall ties behind that. Are they starting to deteriorate? Are they rusting? Are they, bad? Where we're putting in a value for the through wall flashing and weeps. That work is done in small lifts by the contractor. He has to tear out like 3 rows of brick at a time for a short period, like, 6, 8 feet. Otherwise, you start running into structural issues. So what we have to do is we have to bring in a mason and a lift and the structural engineer. They're going to spend a few days tearing out some sections of this to see what's happening behind, because we don't know what's going on. So that's where this is, a lot of this is being predicated by bringing in skilled craftsmen to do destructive, exploratory investigations and rebuilding it, at least whatever they're disturbing. Now, once we tear out certain portions, what we put together, the 320,000 to 500 range is, we still won't know until after that's done if we're tearing out the whole front and rebuilding that, or if it's still just, small portions. So we've got limited values of what we've assumed based on our experience of what we would expect to find behind there. So out of like 8,000 square feet of brick, I'm saying maybe 20 or 2,000 square feet has to be removed and replaced. It could be more, could be less. So that's what Mark's saying, is we don't know what that project cost is until we do the exploratory.
But we do know that we have 2 walls, 2 portions of that front of that stadium that could
It's
fall
bad.
tomorrow, was what I'm saying. You guys could always disagree on how serious things are.
No, that's
But that wall, in the picture you see right now, that wall is probably moved out another ½ inch. If we go there and look at it, that wall's out a good inch out of plumb right now that it wasn't 4 years ago or 5 years ago. There's that much water getting behind it right now. We went to the point, we bought brick, because I was gonna have our maintenance guys tear the one section down, because I'm thinking it's gonna fall under the track someday. So I think it's a serious enough problem that needs to be addressed.
We know that there's water penetration. That's what we know.
Okay, when is the question?
My concern is safety, and what I'm hearing Paul saying is there is a safety issue for our students if they're out there, that there is potential they could be hit with a brick. Collapsing.
You know, I'm not gonna sit there and swear it's gonna happen, but when I look at that wall, I'm not comfortable with it at all.
We,
It's not stable.
If you asked me if I could pull it down, I think I could pull a lot of bricks out of it very quickly.
we had a structural engineer look at it.
Okay.
These are the pictures that are here. What our initial determination is, and what you can see from these pictures, is that there's been long-term water penetration getting into that risk. Okay? At some point, if that continues, it is going to become a serious safety issue.
We have one question, then we'll, and
Yeah, I want to ask Dave, I think this is the area where we used to use it for paper storage, and it all molded because it got wet, and then we fixed, I don't know what we did.
Well,
But we-
our guys are the ones that put this caulking in there, but we paid somebody to put the caulking.
We've
did.
been trying to seal the stadium off
But
unsuccessfully.
water tends to find its way to the weakest point, it's gonna get through no matter
Well,
what.
it said the word's being trapped by the ceiling, but that's a space that so we don't get water in there anymore, do we?
It's not as bad as it used to be,
Right.
we still get water.
Okay, well, I was just, because you weren't saying anything about it, and I thought that we had a big problem with that years
Well, we
ago.
don't store anything under there anymore.
I think Mark's question is, do we want to consider an alternative for this? And I've asked, like a show of hands, do we want to consider an alternative to doing the repair?
You mean,
I have a
Safety
question.
Well, included in the bid,
Is this something we
What?
can't do?
included as an alternate bid.
Yeah. it's an
And
alternative.
and what we're thinking is, while the masons are doing the outside of the high school, which is gonna be needed to be done, they're already on site, let's just have to do Memorial Stadium right away.
I said we worked with this already, we didn't do it, or what?
No, but Paul said he got some bricks to just patch it up.
No, we got enough brick to redo the whole one panel, assuming that we were gonna tear it down and redo it. Because that's what I thought we need to do with it. Now, this whole project comes into play, and we're thinking, we look at doing some rehabilitation
That
work.
could be another year or two. If it's that bad now, why aren't we pulling the brick out or doing something? Or will something else fall if you pull the brick out?
I think it should be a separate project, we don't just doing this.
Okay, well,
Instead of
then what we
going
need to
through all
do,
this bells and whistle stuff, get people in there and fix it. We don't have to go through
well, the-
a $500,000
It should not be part
project.
of, should not, okay, so the feeling is that we were not interested in alternate bid for that. It would have to be handled some other
it
way.
has to be, because of the cost of the project, it's gonna have to be bid under the laws of school. Because, I mean, you're looking at some costs here to repair that. If you wanna put it out to bid, what we need to do is we need to do some additional study on that in order to put the bid documents together to go out and bid it. I mean, you could just say to some mason, come in and repair it, but nobody knows exactly what the problem is. So in order to prepare bid documents to do that, we have to do a little additional study to
But
prepare.
can't we do it ourselves, the district?
If you want to do it.
That's what I'm asking.
Can you
I
repair it
think it's above
yourself?
our threshold.
Pardon me?
I think,
If you don't mean to go, John, I just don't, if he's telling me it's dangerous for the kids out in that track, I don't wanna wait 2 years to fix it. That's my problem.
and that's why we're
And that's gonna take 2 years if we go through
Well, no.
you.
I think if we wanna go right ahead and do that panel that Paul's talking about, I mean, that's a much smaller scope than what we're talking about. That's not gonna handle underneath the grandstands, that's not gonna handle, you know, the leakage in here. That'll take care of the immediate safety problem. We wanna talk about the alternate of fixing the whole brick grandstand. And taking care of it, you know, like it should have been taken care of probably, you know, a few years ago.
I suggest that we keep our focus on our project. Our project is about making room for students in a way that aligns with our strategic plan this doesn't really align with that focus for our project. So it might need to be adjusted, but I don't think it needs to be adjusted as part of our building project, in my opinion.
Then as a separate project, I guess, do you want us to do a study on this and prepare documents and deal with it, or do you just want to leave it go? We're bringing it to your attention because it's a part of the study that wasn't addressed. And we felt we should bring it in as whether you want it as an alternate bid to the project. If you want to do it as a separate project, it can be done as a separate project.
Yes.
I think Donna brings up a good point. I guess my thought is, you know, EI, we charge them with surveying the whole district, and this is one of the things they saw. Correct me if I'm wrong. If we proceed with this, is this part of the reimbursable part for PlanCon, or is this not eligible for any reimbursement?
Well, it could roll into the high school project where you have the same
So
contract.
you roll it in,
And then it becomes part of the whole reimbursable
And
project.
it's,
You're not getting more reimbursement.
well, I understand that, but it's,
But it can roll into the project. And if you do the initial repairs to make it safe, and then you make this part of the project bid, you're gonna have contractors on site. As you heard today, you're gonna have contractors on site, there's gonna be masons, everything's on site. You could make it part of the project, you could do it as an alternate bid, or you could just make it part of the project. And that's why we're trying to bring it to your attention
Any
as
other
part of this
questions?
process.
Question is, do we want to make it part of the project, or we want to make it something separate and treat it separately?
Separate as an alternate, or
Separate, just
totally separate, we do it
Completely
like
separate.
some of the other things that are bid out in the district.
Right.
But the problem is, you know, you're talking about a separate job, a separate mobilization. You know, they're gonna have to come in at a different timetable than the masons we're gonna have doing the outside project. We're only suggesting this because there is a little bit of savings because of, they're mobilizing once, they're on site once, they have the bricks on site. They'll be doing the outside of the high school, might as well just do the Memorial Stadium while you're here. And we don't have to have them come out a separate time and they probably charge people.
yes.
It seems to me that although it may not be, as Donna said, you know, part of the educational part, it is part of the educational experience for our children to be in that, you know, if they play football, whatever they play, their hockey games, all that on that field, and the community uses the stadium. And I think that it's our responsibility to look at the least expensive route. And I tend to believe that using EI and contractors coming in is going to save us money, rather than doing a separate contract. We're gonna have somebody come in, figure out all the specs and all those things anyway. And if you have people on site that are doing it, you know, the chances are you're saving dollars. I don't know if there's any way to break out what the savings would be, but it makes sense to me to roll it in. And, you know, although it's not instructional, it is part of our educational programming that we provide for students, the use of that facility.
See?
well, to tag on, I think it makes sense. What I would hate to see is, and somebody said it, that we proceed with the project, and I believe construction schedule is this fall, it starts, if we continue on schedule, is that correct? So, I would hate to see 2 years from now, 2015, the project's done, but then, we still, you know, we got stadium issues, and we got some other issues, and we got other issues, and it's like, let's finish the high school, we're done. Not that we have to do turf fields or do, you know, soup to nuts, but this obviously, there's issues. So you could look at the pictures, the structural engineer. So to me, I would rate this as kind of like the Monroe Street extension. I mean, to me, you gotta have ingress and egress around the high school, around the campus, and to me, that makes sense. We've heard it from the community as well. And I'm looking at this as the same thing as, to me, this is, you know, ratcheted up on the priority list, as opposed to some nice little thing to do. which quite candidly, that's kind of what I'm thinking on these artificial turf fields. I see the benefit, but to me, that's kind of a nice thing to do. But ingress in and out, getting traffic out of the borough of Boyertown, the stadium, fixing that up, because it's only gonna get worse. And as I learned many years ago, it's gonna cost more later. So, on any project, at your home, a business, whatever, if you got that little leak going, if you don't fix it now, that little leak will become a big leak, and the cost is gonna be higher later. So, I'm kind of thinking, let's do it. I think Donna brings up a good point, but I see a priority in that.
Any other comments? Frankly, I was cool toward this because I was hesitant to wait 2 years to have it repaired. But you brought up comment that the construction is gonna start, later this year. If that's part of the repair early, I would change my feeling.
We could make that an early phase of the project in the process, I
If
mean, maybe you don't wanna do it until, at a certain point, but I think what the first thing, what we're suggesting is that we do further investigation, we come back to the board, report on a more exact cost once we do the investigation, and then it can be made an alternate bid to the project, and you would know what the cost would be to repair the stadium when the bids come in.
And you would be able to put that in the early stages of the construction.
Yes.
Okay, and let's go on.
Okay.
Who would be in favor of putting an alternate out on that, having
Well,
it
the
developed, have an alternate out on it?
If it was a priority, yeah, I would support it.
Yeah.
It has to be a priority though. It has to get done first.
So it's what, we have Barbara? Ron?
I agree with Joe.
All right, Joe? It has to be done. One of the first things in the project, for the safety of the
Early
kids.
phase.
We'll make it a priority in the early phases of the project, so as we develop the phasing plan, that would be early on.
Okay,
Early phase.
let's do the development on that then. But keep in mind, we want to get that done early in the construction.
I've done a question.
Yes.
We went through, earlier, we went through listening to all those 5 companies talking about the management of the projects. But when you put out the RFP on that was for the main building. That didn't include the things we're talking about now.
Full project.
Or was that for any alternatives? What was that? I'm just curious, because will they be managing the other pieces of the project
Yeah.
at this price? Okay, I just want to be sure.
Then you're really seeing it though.
I think it's wrong too.
Their price for quoting is based on their manpower, how many hours they have put into it. So,
Okay,
Right,
okay,
but
so
if
it's
they
not
didn't-
on the project.
But if they didn't see the alternates, how could they figure man hours?
Well, if they have a person or a person and a half on site, and you're doing stadium work or you're doing field work, they still have a man and a half on site. So really what they're pricing is the amount of time and the amount of people that they have on site during the duration of the project. They're not really pricing the individual projects.
I realize that, but if
I think
we're
it's the
throwing something
pre-construction.
else into it,
Oh,
they weren't intending to be there on site with that, how would that work?
Well, they have a man on site, so whether we.
I know that.
But so whether we're doing paving, or whether we're doing stadium work, or whether we're doing
So
additional.
you're saying this won't take any more time?
No, whether we add additional window work to the project, or we do an additional field, they still have people on site.
But it seems to me like where the cost could come in is in the pre-construction, when they're reviewing the documents of all the alts, that the actual cost of the project is now more than what they did the project.
It could, but we normally don't see that in a CM, but that typically has an impact on their fee. Even in the pre-construction services, normally they're pricing, that they're giving one estimate on the project. Or they're spending so many hours in pre-construction, that's normally an hour's time. Is put together.
Okay.
Is put together.
It is the opinion of the majority here, that we want to develop that. And it still gives us the option way down the road if we accept it or not. Okay. Next item?
The next item we had was the basement addition to the project. If you recall, that was one of the alternates early on the site where the site drops off. We are proposing that this would be an alternate bid. We have to put in, there's exposed walls in this area where the site drops off. This is going to be a very inexpensive storage area for the project. We ran some additional numbers on it as we developed the project. I know this is important for storage for district supplies. So this was one of the earlier suggestions for an alternate. So we're not really doing a lot of excavation for this. This is more driven by as the site drops off on the site.
Okay, any questions?
Yes, I guess I'd like to ask our engineer,
Yes.
facility. Paul, is the necessity of the basement addition to, and also for Dr. Cooper?
I think there's a couple of things. First of all, we have a ramp that goes into the existing basement. That allows us to get equipment down there to store our equipment. You know, a lot of the ground equipment will go there, you know, over the winter and stuff like that. And there's a lot of stuff that can only get down there through a bigger door, stuff when we store big skids and big equipment, kitchen equipment, whatever. What we're showing right now, we lose that access ramp. In order for EI to put in a new access ramp, it's gonna cost $150,000 to do the excavation, pour the concrete walls. So we're always going to, and I've basically threatened them with their lives, that if they don't give me access to my basement, I'm going to come looking for them. Because we need that space. Either that or you build me a new maintenance garage, which is just as fine and dandy. But I figure we never have enough maintenance around here. Enough storage areas. We're always looking for some place to pack something. So it goes into the stadium where it gets wet, and then we have to throw it out, you know, because you can't keep it. As EI says, this is cheap space, because if you don't just dig down a little bit more and build it, now you've got to fill it in. So between the additional cost of backfilling the space, the additional cost of building the ramp to get us where we're at right now, once you put the additions on, the thing is probably paid for half of its value in just building it. That's how I look at it. And yes, it's sorely needed throughout the district, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, any comments? Miss?
Mark, I just want to understand, you said it was inexpensive, but I read $1,575,000. Is that accurate, or is there some extra zeros there?
I think, I meant per square foot cost. Okay. I didn't, the total cost. I think the fact that, if you look at the overall square foot cost, and I think we can look at that number in greater detail as we develop this and we look at the finishes.
And what drives that cost? Is it's concrete, poured concrete and doors? Is that what I?
Well, you've got the second floor structure underneath the band room and stuff also that we have to put in. But I'm basically carrying $125 a square foot for the 10,000 square feet. That might be a little high, but again, I don't want to, it's not a $200 square foot finished space. So will it be less than that once a detailed estimate is done?
We will know better. And the finishes that we use, I mean, are we using poured concrete walls? Or are we using block walls?
Certainly would hope you would concrete walls.
So I think there's some things on the estimate yet that we have to refine. But that is, I mean, it is a large storage area. We're showing an overhead door, space to get in there.
Do we use any storage outside the building anywhere?
Memorial Stadium, we have that house, you know, that
shed
We
there.
use a lot of Memorial Stadium, but I mean, every school has that holds something somewhere that, they can't get to, you know, I mean,
Didn't we have someplace, somewhere, where when the cafeteria made their order, we stored it? We didn't? I thought we did.
This is
Okay,
district
any other
storage,
questions or comments?
district-wide. This is district-wide storage. It's just not high school storage, it's district-wide storage.
Mark, you can design that, provide what Paul needs. And as I see right now, Paul has access to what he needs. He doesn't want to lose that because we got additional space. Is that right?
I don't wanna lose access to the space that that we use right now, and in doing the addition, we lose access and we lose functionality. So they've gotta give me that functionality somehow, some way, you know,
Yes.
that-
My question is, what